Hello, welcome back to my channel, Ask MCT Chris. In this session, we're going to look at how to embed ChatGPT in Excel, and we're going to do that using Office scripts. But before we start, let's watch my intro. Now, what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT is an AI chatbot that was initially built on a family of large language models, and it is collectively known as GPT-3. Now, these models can understand and generate human-like answers and text prompts because they've been trained on huge amounts of data. Now, ChatGPT's most original GPT 3.5 model was trained on 570 gigabytes of text data from the internet, which OpenAI says it included books, articles, websites, and even social media. Now, because it's been trained on hundreds of billions of words, the ChatGPT can create responses that make it like its own words, and we call it a friendly and intelligent robot. Now, what we're going to do today in this session is to embed ChatGPT in Excel, and we're going to use Office scripts. Now, before we embed ChatGPT into our Excel spreadsheet, we first need to create an account under OpenAI.com. OpenAI.com will give us a key, an API key, and you need to copy that because we need to paste that in one of the cells in our Excel spreadsheet. In my case, I have created here two sheets. One is API, which I have pasted my API key on cell A1. And now I have created another sheet which is called OpenAI, and then just placed in here some highlighted cell like B2, which we're going to type our question, and in B4, that's where we will see the answer of the ChatGPT. So, we're now going to create an Office script by going into Automate and click on New Script. When we create a new script, there would be a function in there that will be created, and the name of the function is main. Now I'm going to rename the script to Run ChatGPT. And inside that main function, that is where we're going to write our code. Now, the function that we're going to run should run in the background so that Excel will still be responsive. And in order to do that, we need to run the main function in asynchronous mode. The first line of code that we're going to write in here is a code that sets the OpenAI API URL. And what we can do in here is to create a variable, and I will call my variable endpoint, and it's a string data type, and I will place the OpenAI API. And where can we find this OpenAI API? We can go into the documentation of OpenAI, click on the API reference, and go into the completion, and you will see in here the API of ChatGPT, and that is what we have placed onto the constant variable of our endpoint. The next line of code would be a reference to our API key, which is in the API sheet and in A1, and we're going to read A1. And the code for that would be as follows: that we wanted to have a reference to API sheet, reference to A1 cell, and we are now reading the value of A1 cell. The next line of code that we're going to write in here would be a reference to the B2 where we write our question. And that would be getting an instance of the sheet OpenAI, an instance of cell B2, and reading the value of cell B2. And after we have created those variables to reference to an API key and the question, the next thing we need to do is set the model engine and the prompt. Now, what is that model engine? If we go back to the documentation of OpenAI and then go into the models, you will see in here the listing of the different models that is in ChatGPT or OpenAI. And you can see in here under ChatGPT 3.5, there are some latest model in there, and one of it is the one that we're going to use, which is the Text DaVinci 002, which has the same capability of 003 that can do any language task. So that's what we're going to do. So in our Excel workbook, we're going to create another variable that will get that model of DaVinci 002. And then we're going to create the model and the prompt, which is the prompt is just basically referring to the value of our B2 cell, which is, I'm now going to create another variable in here called prompt, which is either a string, a boolean, and a number data type, and we'll just capture the value of B2. Now, after setting the model engine and the prompt, we are now about to set the headers, the HTTP headers. Now, if we're going to API reference again, and then go to the completion, you can see in here how the request is made. And that is with the URL, and in the header, we've got the content type, which is the value of that is the application JSON, and the authorization, which has the API key. So our next code is setting up the HTTP header, which has this line of code that I'm creating an object of type headers, instantiating it, and appending content type, and the value of it is application JSON, and appending also the authorization, which has the value that is referencing our API variable. So after setting the HTTP headers, it is now time for us to set up the body. And this is the body. So the next line of codes that I'm going to write is setting up the HTTP body, which is, it's either string, boolean, number data type, and we need to call JSON stringify and putting the values of the model. And this is our variable model, which is referring to DaVinci 002. This is the prompt, which is referring to our text, question text, which is in B2. And this is just some values that I place on the max token, the n, and the temperature. After setting up the HTTP headers and the HTTP body, it is now time for us to send the HTTP request. And to send the HTTP request, we need to call the fetch function, and this function, of course, will return a response. That's why we have created here a variable called response with a type of response. And we are sending that HTTP request as a post, and the headers will be referring to our headers variable, and the body will be referring to our body variable. And the response will be cached in the response variable. The next line of code will be parsing the response as a JSON format. And this is how we're going to do it. We create a variable called JSON, and that response is being parsed as a JSON. And there would be a return value which is of string, boolean, and number. We call it choices, and it's going to be an array. And after we have parsed the response as a JSON, we are now going to get the answer. And to get the answer, we create a variable of type string, boolean, and number, and we call the JSON and call the choices, and then get the text of that answer. And once we get the text of an answer, it is now time for us to write the answer in B4. So our code in here will have a reference to B4 cell and set the value of that cell to the answer of the variable text. And that's the entire script to call the HTTP request of OpenAI. We'll save the script. We'll embed a button in our Excel spreadsheet by clicking on the ellipsis and then add a button, and a button will be added onto our Excel spreadsheet. We'll just move this button and we'll test it. Okay, let's ask our first question. How can we total the sales from A1 to A100? And let's click on Run ChatGPT. Wait for the answer. And we now have the answer. You can use the sum function to total the sales from A1 to 100. For example, if the sales are stored in cells A1 to 100, you use the function sum. Oh, that's pretty awesome. Let's ask another question. One day itinerary to see Paris. Run ChatGPT, and it gives us the answer. Start the day with visit to the Eiffel Tower located in that, and afterward head to the Louvre. Beautiful. That's it. ChatGPT inside Excel, and we've used Office Script. I hope you've enjoyed this session, and if you did, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe for more tips and tricks from me. Thank you for watching.